Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Australian Open round one catch up,
Djokovic and Coach Murray are up and running.
Raducanu leads the Brits with Alexandrova upset.
And Kyrgios ponders retirement after his straight sets loss.
Chris, today is the 14th of January, and we are here to catch up on round one of the Australian Open at Tennis Weekly HQ. Melbourne Park, that is a wrap on the first round of action. 3 days of action. And Chris, who would have thought one of the biggest talking points from round one is the fact that the Brits have 6 players into round two?
I mean, 6 players. We didn't even have, did we have 7 players in the draw? We had a lucky loser in Harriet Dart. So we've gained one, we've lost one, is what my estimation says.
What is going on there? Yeah, I know. Impressive stuff. Yeah, we're gonna be diving into that. We're gonna be diving into, say, Novak Djokovic and Coach Murray, Nick Kyrgios as well in the second half. And we're also going to be unveiling our collector set picks and our predictions. So yeah, lots to look forward to in this episode. Now we must begin actually because last episode I was very excited and energetic, enthused by the fact that I proclaimed Maria Sakkari is back. Maria Sakkari is Backery.
Yes,
but after today,
Backery?
she's not Backery. She's not Backery.
She's not. I was a bit worried that maybe I came across as slightly too harsh in that, saying that was the worst prediction of us all. But I mean, she was upset. So hopefully what we said didn't have an impact.
How is she having these results at Grand Slams? I think I read 6 of the last 8 Grand Slams she's gone out at the first hurdle.
I mean, it's quite shocking when you look at that sort of number, especially when you see the talent that she has. As we always say, tennis is between the ears. But Joel, you are not actually probably the worst in the predictions game. I do think that Kim and I also do have to kind of put our hands up to this. We both called upset alert on 2 Americans, Jessica Pegula and Taylor Fritz, and then combined they lost 8 games in the first round. So that's not the best start for us. Our bold predictions, sometimes too bold. But Madison,
there's some sort of equilibrium going on. Like the more shocking our predictions, maybe the better it is for the Brits because they are absolutely flying, and we're going to be diving into some of those performances. But let's start with all the action from today, from day 3, and we're going to be talking first of all about the highest seeded male player to be dumped out in a full match, Andrey Rublev out to Joao Fonseca. Now, this is a big deal, Chris, because this was Fonseca's main draw slam debut, 18 years old. He's just won the Next Gen ATP Finals. And what a way to announce yourself. World number 9, Rublev, straight sets, no less. What did you make of this performance?
I mean, we didn't talk about it that much in our first podcast, but it went a bit under the radar in the draw because obviously it was qualifier. A qualifier was being placed there, so we didn't necessarily know who that would be when we actually recorded. A nightmare draw for Andrey Rublev because obviously this is a very talented player with nothing to lose, who's high on confidence. The Next Gen Finals literally just happened. But I was so impressed by the fact that at times he was down a break, he regained that break, he won 2 close tie breaks. And it just showed me that he, right now, is such a dangerous player and such a great talent. I mean, it's almost prodigious, like his talent level, because the serve, the ground strokes, he's not playing like an 18-year-old. And it does make me think, Joel, is Rublev moving into the Tsitsipas camp of will they ever make it to the big win?
Yeah, because a few seasons ago, maybe not necessarily last season, these sorts of players Rublev would just have for breakfast really in Grand Slam draws, and we were sort of talking about him more as a sort of staple of that second week, and actually he needs to be beating the players ranked and seeded above him. But it felt like last season he became a little bit more erratic as a top 10 player, and it's really had an impact on his ranking and his performances. I would actually say today I don't think he was actually that erratic. I think Fonseca just played incredible and just showed what a talent he is. I mean, how special do you think he is? Because, I'm already thinking like, Jack Draper went on that semi-final run at the US Open. what do you make of Fonseca and his prospects at the Australian Open, and just in terms of a bigger picture this season? Because it feels like there's a lot of hype on him and a bigger spotlight on him now because of that next gen finals win.
I mean, for sure, there'll be a lot more focus. I think he was not expected to win that next gen finals because obviously Arthur Fils was in the draw. So he is very established on the tour already. There are a few other names that were very established, like Mensik was also there. And so the draw is opening up for him. And I think he's going to have to just try and ignore the noise because obviously Brazil, it has had a bit of a history of tennis. Gugo being such a huge star there. I mean, such a generational icon. So I think people will start to make those comparisons when it comes to Brazilian tennis and what he might be able to achieve, especially because, I mean, Kuerten did that from such a young age as well. So the pressure will be there to find another Brazilian star, and this really could be it. But in terms of what he can do the rest of the year, I mean, we're looking at top 20 has to be the aim if he's able to stay fit, because there's no reason why he wouldn't be able to emulate, what Arthur Fils did last year or the year before. Again, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but aside from anything happening out of the ordinary or the struggles that there may be to kind of cement yourself as a young player mentally on the tour and the physicality involved, he's got all the weapons and all the games. So it's a very exciting player to watch for the future.
Definitely. And we also had Daniil, Medvedev and Holger Rune come through in 5 sets. They did avoid the upset. However, having said that, Medvedev did get upset during the match. And Chris, I don't know if you saw this. He got so angry during his match. He beat the world-ranked 418 Kasidit Samrej.
I think you did a good job.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to leave that. I did a good job there. Right, he defeated this player in 5 sets, but he destroyed the net camera in the process. Again, what was your reaction to this? Because, this is typical Medvedev behavior, but the thing that surprised me was it didn't go punished.
No, it didn't, which was quite strange. Also, I mean, he wasn't actually hitting it that hard at that point. So it almost looked like he was sort of like fanning the net cam. And then they did cut to net cam and then it just switched off. So I think that counts as like damaging the equipment. He's had a go at a camera before, hasn't he? Famously in Cincinnati, where he tried to give that a good shove. So it's not out of the ordinary for him. I do think there should obviously have been a violation. I think the lack of consistency there we talk about so much. But
what would you have given him? Because I agree with you. I mean, if you damage equipment on the court, that just feels to me like a no-brainer in terms of a penalty. Now, what level of severity would you have gone? Would you point penalty, or
I think
a default feels a bit excessive? But where do you stand?
Well, it wouldn't be a default. I think if he already had a warning at that point, then it would be a point penalty, and then above that you end up in the games and so on and so forth. There needs to be a pretty hefty fine for this because you've got to pay for the equipment you've broken, but you also can't be behaving like that. And I think probably, asked after about it, they'll see the funny side, but it is very disrespectful. So less of that on the tour, please. Even if it is very funny, the footage that comes on Netcam.
He needs to just basically be given the receipt of the Netcam, and that is his fine. And he needs to go put a new Netcam on the court.
You need Daniil Medvedev insurance, don't you?
Yeah. I'm almost expecting like Hawkeye or whoever it is sort of knocking on his door afterwards, being like, "Here is the broken Netcam, sir. Go get us a new one."
Yes.
So we'll wait and see. We'll see what punishment, if he does get punishment, dished out to him. I mean, other notable talking points from the men's side: Gael Monfils versus Mapeshi Pericard. We were all salivating, I feel, in our draw predictions at Pericard, but he's been dumped out in the first round by Monfils. I mean, he became the oldest ATP champion in Auckland like a week ago. And was defeated in 5 sets. It was almost 4 hours. It's the 6th consecutive win for Gael Monfils. The old dog, he's still there, and he's still barking loudly.
He is. And when Kim spoke to him at UTS, he was talking about retirement, talking about, it's very difficult spending time away from his daughter, the age that she is, being on a flight at Christmas. And it felt like maybe, the balance of enjoyment that he was getting from the sport might not be there because he's missing those moments that matter so much to him. So seeing him start the season so positively, especially from such a genuinely nice guy and so well-loved player, I think it's just great to see. And so often we see, the curse of doing well the week before a slam tends to mean you go out in the first round.
Yeah.
Or you might be a bit burnt out. I mean, as you say, he's not a spring chicken. So hugely impressive. The way that he moves and the way that he plays for someone who's 38. I mean, it's unbelievable. I feel like I say the word unbelievable for a lot of things happening. The youngest, the oldest of the draw. But either way, it's an unbelievable achievement. I haven't gotten the word for it.
There were 2 breaks in the match, I believe, both going to Monfils. I think maybe it shows to Pericard. Pericard, I don't actually think manufactured a break point on the Monfils serve. I think it just shows the fact that,
he's got it.
He's got a big weapon, but he needs to work on his return game, arguably, because he's not manufacturing those opportunities. And you can't just leave it up to the gods, I think, in the tie break. So, work to do there. And from a British point of view today, Raducanu and Katie Boulter are through. They defeated Alexandrova and Rebecca Marino, respectively. Let's talk about Raducanu first, because that happened as we were going to bed. I watched the start of it. I saw a lot of double faults. Raducanu ended up with 15 double faults, but she did come through in straight sets. Chris, this is a very decent result, particularly given the troubles that she was having on her serve.
Really good result. It was also the player that she was supposed to play in that Wimbledon first round who ended up pulling out, Alexandrova.
Oh, interesting.
So she's now made the point that maybe she would have won that. We thought that would have been quite tricky at the time. Always tough to play a seed with a great serve in the opponent that she played in Alexandrova. You just want to get a win at this stage. So I think for her first match of the season, there were some question marks around fitness. There were some question marks around jumping ants that may have bitten her. And then she didn't take the spray because she didn't want to get done for doping in case there was something funny in it. Yeah. So definitely set itself up for a rocky start to the Australian Open for her, but she definitely managed to weather the tide. And she did even have a quite funny comment about her serve saying it had a mind of its own. So let's hope she doesn't hit 15 double faults in her next round.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It felt when I was watching the first few games before I nodded off, it was almost like the Pericard approach to serving. It felt like 2 first serves at time. It was ultra aggressive, and when it was working on the first serve, it was winning her a lot of cheap points. But she definitely needs to keep an eye on that double fault count going forward. Katie Boulter against Rebecca Marino. Now, I honestly didn't think Boulter should have had too many issues with Marino, but got it done, just about squeaked through in the end in 3 sets, 7-5 in the third. Did you catch any of this? Because I'm not gonna lie, I was almost like head in hands at the prospect of Boulter losing when I thought she's got a nice draw here. She needs to not fall at the first hurdle.
It is a good draw, and I think sometimes that can add that additional pressure. She does have a good head-to-head against Marino as well, so very surprised by that. But I think Marino's level was higher than when they played previously.
Yeah, I agree.
I was pretty impressed with her. I think it wasn't just a serve. She was able to actually do quite a lot with the ball. And for Katie, it's about grinding out these wins. She had that really tough loss to Harriet Dart in a really close match at Wimbledon. So tick, as I said with Raducanu, get the W and then move on. And then I think when you play against some of those higher ranked opponents, that's actually when Katie tends to play some of her best tennis. So getting past some of these potentially easy looking sort of draws that she may have just shows you that she could probably be quite dangerous if she gets a free swing.
Well, let's take a look back on day 2 at the Australian Open. Still talking about round 1. And the biggest highlight, probably, particularly for British fans, but just I think generally with tennis fans, it was the Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray partnership, coaching partnership.
They weren't playing each other this time.
They weren't playing each other. Yeah, I'm still getting used to that. But yeah, Djokovic came through, defeated the 19-year-old American Nishesh Basava Reddy in 4 sets. Did drop that first set. we'll talk about Basavaredi in a sec, but yeah, Djokovic and Murray, the coaching pod, this new coaching pod, the Australian Open have introduced. I mean, if there was ever a time to use it and to promote it, I feel like it's this time with Murray talking to Djokovic. I mean, what do you think Murray was saying to Djokovic during this match? Because Djokovic didn't necessarily have it all his own way.
No, and he really started badly. It was one of the worst sort of sets of tennis that I've seen Novak Djokovic play. And that's not necessarily...
Did not fill me with a lot of confidence, to be honest.
No, it didn't. But at the same time, would you ever think that Novak Djokovic would end up losing that match? Obviously not. And he didn't. Quite often we've seen him lose sets in the first round of slams. You know, a young Jack Draper took a set off him at Wimbledon. We had Jensen Brooksby. I think we've had several other players who have taken sets early on, especially kind of in that first round, and especially the first set of the first round. So I think not too untoward in that sense, but he did come through and got better as the match went on. I think the intensity of it also did get to his opponent because there was signs of cramp as well. So very much not a good performance from him. I think, Andy Murray being on the sideline, I'm not sure that you can say that anything made a particular difference. I think the nature of their interactions was quite fascinating to see. They were quite serious.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I didn't get to hear it.
It's really, it's like if we're going to do it, then let's do it with all the bells and whistles. They're on the court
in the pod. Please put a camera there. I want a camera in his face and I want a mic. Can we mic him? Mic him up.
Do you think it's deliberately not there just to keep things secret, and there needs to be some level of privacy in relation to tactics? Because this is the sort of information that could just basically get relayed to your opponent if there's someone from their boxes maybe watching on the television.
It is a bit different when it comes to the tour versus slam. So I think probably it's for the best, but for the TV audience and probably from our selfish perspective, we would love to hear it. The big question I have though, Joel, is Djokovic, you were questioning his, the focus. Is he having too much fun? Where is his level going to be at? Surely this is making you think that potentially what you said, that you didn't see him having a deep run here, looks a little bit more likely.
I agree. I after that first set, and I know he got the job done in 4 sets, but there wasn't anything here that made me think, oh yeah, this is the Djokovic who's going to come roaring back this season, at a place he's so familiar with and win, another, the Grand Slam title number 25. I just did not see that. I mean, he can obviously play himself into the tournament and he's got a nice, I think, easy matchup in his second round. But I'm just not that confident. Having said that, I thought Basavaredi played exceptional, way above his ranking, and it was a shame almost. I feel like he ran out of steam. Physical ailments sort of got the better of him. But yeah, I'm not convinced. There's a lot more to go. There's a lot more gears. I think Murray will need to, be looking to get out of Djokovic, because I don't think this was necessarily that satisfactory.
Do you think that any of the sort of the scar tissue that he's talked about previously of, coming to Australia after what happened in that incident where he was detained, is this just a place where he might not enjoy being as much as he used to when he had so much success here? Do you think that maybe that's what he's trying to find the joy again by some of the sort of the antics that you're seeing in the pre lead up and some of the matches and the fun that you're seeing him have with Andy Murray? Because it doesn't feel like this is his happy place anymore.
No, I know what you mean. It does feel like a bit of almost like a circus at times with the Murray stuff going on, and I just wonder if it is a little bit like distracting, and how do you keep an eye on the tennis and your focus on it when all of this is going around you? But at the same time, this is a completely new dynamic for Djokovic, and maybe it's that new dynamic, that fresh approach that's going to unlock something we've just not seen in him the last 12 months.
It is early days, isn't it?
It is very early days, exactly. I mean, he's not really played that much tennis, recently. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But one Brit who was on the court was Jacob Fearnley, who played Nick Kyrgios and defeated Nick Kyrgios in straight sets. Now, Chris, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Nick Kyrgios in the second half, but I just wanted to touch on Jacob Fearnley because, I mean, what an impressive performance from him. Straight sets. We actually put a Twitter poll out on our account, and the majority of our fans were most impressed of the British performances by Fearnley. yeah, what did you make of his performance against Kyrgios and the fact that he was able to get it done in straight sets in what felt at times kind of relatively routine fashion?
I mean, it was very impressive because this is the test. You know, you're up against a player with a very rowdy crowd. It's definitely the sort of court where quite often you might find that the crowd can get to you. It obviously didn't get to him, and an opponent who we talked about distracting opponents potentially. I mean, it doesn't get that much more distracting than playing against Nick Kyrgios because there, and we'll talk about this later, there are a lot of antics that happen. But he's a player who I first saw play up close against Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon, and he did win a set there. That was very competitive, and then Djokovic went on to make another final. So he obviously has the level. I'm just pleased that he's putting it together on the Grand Slam stage because he has been opting to play a lot of the challenger events.
He's too good for challenge. It feels like he's too good for challengers.
It feels like it's a tactical thing to get the ranking up because I think Billy Harris was kind of having a similar rise last summer on the grass court, and he actually opted to play more tour level events, but that meant more first round losses or qualifying, which meant he wasn't getting the ranking points. So he had to play qualifying, whereas Fearnley made it straight in. So I think it's actually quite an interesting tactic, but I would like to see that kind of drift away now, and I'd like to see him play more of these tour events, but still take nothing away from the fact that he's had a meteoric rise in the rankings, and it's going to be such an exciting year for him.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the season has for him because, yeah, when we've seen him on the Grand Slam stage, he looks very calm, very measured. There was a slight wobble in that third set against Kyrgios, but apart from that, you know, dealing with Nick, dealing with the crowd,
dealing with Nick, done, yeah,
dealing with the crowd, dealing with that atmosphere. It was very, very impressive. And I feel like he's been rewarded with Arthur Cazot in the next round. Let's just hope he can, as I say, back up what he called his best performance in his career in the second round because it was very, very good indeed. I mean, moving on just quickly, I mean, Naomi Osaka also up and running. Came through against Caroline Garcia in 3 sets, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3.
You loved this one, Joel.
I really enjoyed watching this. This was to me like this is two players with a point to prove. And it was like who was going to come out on top. You also had the added dynamic of Patrick Muratoglu there in the corner of Osaka. I was quite intrigued actually because Osaka had a book that she brought out on changeover, and there were some lines in it, and the camera couldn't zoom in. It wasn't that high def to capture what some of the notes were. But I was sort of thinking, oh, what is written in that book? Because it helped her reset and refocus because she did have that second set wobble.
Yeah, she has always actually had a notebook, and she even has had an actual book on court before as well. So I think that's definitely part of her routine. It feels like this is the start of the Osaka comeback proper. I think last year it didn't obviously go as well as she would have liked it to, and there were lots of moments which were probably lows for her. Same opponent a year later, she gets the win. She looked a lot more confident. She looked a lot less stressed, and I think she was very stressed about, you know, the idea of coming back and playing perfect tennis and being, you know, world number one again, winning slams. And I think she realized, you know what, it's going to take a whole lot longer than she initially thought. So great to see her playing assured tennis. Great to see her winning a 3-set match. I think that's so much fun to see because she is good at that. She's good at turning matches around and she is strong mentally. So that's great. A bit sad for Garcia. Tough draw. She's had a tough time, and you hope that kind of she does get the lift in the rankings that she probably deserves. But Mukova next. I mean,
I was going to say, it doesn't get any easier, does it? And Mukova did look good in that first round, so we'll have to see how that progresses. But I'm definitely looking forward to that. I feel like that is one of the matches of round 2 across the men and women's draws. I mean, elsewhere we had Harriet Dart, Jodie Burrage, Jack Draper through for the Brits. Belinda Bencic dumping out Yelena Ostapenko. Huge. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Belinda Bencic, she's been out in what? She's been injured. She must have been injured.
Maternity leave.
Sorry, my bad.
Yes, now she's back. Maternity leave.
Okay, she's back. Yeah. And before we go to a quick break, I love this story. Qualifier Hadi Habib, first ever Lebanon player to win a match at a Grand Slam main draw. He came through qualifying. I think he saved like 3 match points in his final qualifying round to get there. And then has now reached the second round. And I was just watching the match point of this. The roar afterwards, it was so loud and impassioned, and it was so exciting just to see.
It was great, and what a story. I think this has really been such a great start to the Australian Open. I think beforehand, you're thinking, is it a bit early? Can we get the hype going? And it's just been off to an absolute bang. It's been so full of great stories, so many great matches, great results, match points saved, 5-set matches, and not 5-set matches that don't have the quality. I think we're seeing quality everywhere, and we're seeing really, really, really competitive and enjoyable tennis. So I think just a testament to the fact that he's playing great tennis, and he's playing for something more potentially than just, the ranking points or the round. He's playing for his country.
Yeah, and we're seeing lots of really exciting stories on the main courts, but also on the outside courts. So great to see. We're going to take a quick break now. Do join us in the second half, where we will be taking a look closer at what's next for Nick Kyrgios, all the action from day one, and we will be also unveiling our collector set predictions. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast and our Australian Open Round 1 catch-up. And now, Chris, we're going to talk about Nick Kyrgios. I held back on him in the first half because I feel like we need a little bit of a segment on him, because there are just so many questions, so many talking points to really kind of dive into for a player who, as I say, has been off the tour for a long, long time, almost basically like 2 years, has come back, had a match, has had a Grand Slam match, and is already sort of talking on retirement. So yeah, there's lots to unpack here. I guess the most interesting question, let's start there. What is next for Nick Kyrgios? Because he spoke about retirement in his post-match press conference. Where do you think this leaves him?
Well, he did, and I think people are a bit surprised to hear this because he was just mounting his comeback. He said he's probably played his last singles match in Australia. He was really kind of taking all of that in, and that's quite surprising. I think he did talk about the fact that, he was thinking whether he would go off and retire, but he said he didn't want to throw in the towel and retire in that match. He was hurting physically. I also do think that he's a man with an ego. So I think potentially, some of those comments saying, you respect your opponent, people waited to see you play. I do think that some of that is actually what you say when you are hurting, both physically and mentally, following a really tough match. I think we've seen that before when people have made comments saying that this might be the last match that they play. I'm not saying it's similar at all, but Danielle Collins said after her loss in Australia that this would probably be the last time she'd be here. And things can change. Obviously, that was very, very different to Nick Kyrgios' sort of the physical issues that he has been talking about. So I do think you take this with a pinch of salt, because if Nick decides that he is playing well, if the results pick up, do I think he'll continue playing? And do I think he likes the spotlight of it? Yes. But do I think he likes the rigor of regularly practicing to the level and getting your body physically to the level it needs to be? I don't think that's what he loves. I think he loves the showmanship of playing. And it's not that fun when you lose, especially after everything he's been saying off the court.
And I mean, he's been off for 2 years. To flick that switch, to go from there to back into ATP tour mode,
5-set,
grinding week in, week out, playing all those practice matches, hitting those practice balls, getting yourself up to a level. It's so tough. It's not just like you can just walk. Even for a player who is naturally talented, even for those others, it doesn't necessarily get results, and you need to put that practice in. And it'll be interesting to see whether Nick Kyrgios is up to that, because I sense sometimes whether he just wants to play with his mate Thanasi Kokkinakis in the doubles, and he just sort of maybe prefer that as opposed to trying to go all in on the singles and maybe win a Grand Slam title.
Yeah, and he talked about the fact that he has no regrets. He says he's cheated a lot, but he has no regrets if he were to hang up his racket. I actually think that one of the most engaging times of his career was when he really did believe he could win Wimbledon. And I think that was that sort of second peak that he had, where he really showed everybody that he was a very serious contender. And then obviously there were a few things that happened after that, with injuries, for example, which meant that he has had to step away, having so recently actually made a final at a slam, and his maiden final at a slam. So that is a big shame. And I think sometimes you say that to protect yourself from the reality of a situation where everyone thought potentially his career would go a little bit differently. He got it back on track, and then the injury side of things has really derailed it. And then when you're, as you say, getting yourself back into it, all that training to get a first round loss, I mean, it's a bit like when Naomi Osaka was coming back as well, and then you don't get to where you want to be. It doesn't come immediately. And you're losing to players who are younger than you, who are, barely inside the top 100. That's not the Nick Kyrgios or not what Nick Kyrgios gets out of bed for in the morning. So I can understand those comments. In terms of the level, he didn't win a set here. He's been talking a lot of talk, and a lot of people expected him to have to come out and play some big tennis because of what he's been saying off the court. Do you think that his tennis was big enough? Do you think he's made any sort of statement with any of the results or the tennis he's played since he's returned?
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering to myself, can I see this player, ultimately maybe further down the road getting back to a Grand Slam conversation, particularly I think around Wimbledon, because if there is a court surface that I think can mask maybe, your desire to put in all the practice, and you can rely on just a few shots here and there with the serve that Kyrgios has.
Great doubles player
as well. So in the match against Fearnley, I'm not gonna lie, I felt like he made too many errors, and he left it too late in that third set to really kind of have a go at Fearnley. This is his second match back, so I don't think there was too much to really expect. But at the same time, this was a good opportunity to make a statement, because I think, when you talk the talk, when you have all that expectation, that pressure, and you come up against someone who, the casual fan is going to look at and is going to say they're unseeded, bit of an unknown, they should be doing better here. I think he maybe will be a little bit disappointed with what he left out on the tennis court.
I can see that. I think that is something where this was the match where even getting one win in Australia would have been big from a comeback. And I think it would have answered some of those questions. I think there are bigger questions. I do think the grass court season will be great to him. He also does have the punditry side of things. I think we also have to talk about the fact that a lot of people aren't particularly happy with him, and the fact that a lot of things he says off the court, the history of bad behavior, that he was also pled guilty to assaulting his ex-girlfriend. He was then rehired as a ESPN pundit. I think a lot of people are kind of, and a lot of what we saw on our social media as well, was people were not necessarily supporting him anymore. And it feels like we're sort of getting into, a bit of a Boris Becker side of thing, because he's also saying quite a lot of things about quite a lot of other players. He always has done that.
Yeah. So I've always been interested by this because, for example, he's had a lot to say about, Jannik Sinner. And I almost wonder if this first round match was against a top player, a seeded player, would that have changed the dynamic, and would that have brought out almost like a different Nick Kyrgios? Would that have actually been a better, draw to have? Because, it almost would have, like, in my head, like, energized him up, fired him up, to just kind of show, as I say, I need to back up this chat. Whereas against someone like Fearnley, he was sort of going in as the favourite, which felt a little bit unfair to Fearnley, because this guy's been off the tour for 2 years, waltzing back in. So yeah, it's tough. Do you think he would have maybe preferred to have a different a more seasoned kind of player higher up in the rankings to have a go at, just to have that sort of chainsaw off approach?
I mean, as a player, he does get fired up about certain things, and I think that's when he's got a point to prove. And now, obviously, he has got a point to prove, because a lot of people who don't think he can do it again, that's either going to go one of two ways. Either you're like, you know what, my body can't do it anymore, or you find a way. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily an option for him. I don't know the nature of his injuries at the moment or where they're at. But I do think that this could actually be almost like, I'm not saying he's necessarily the villain, but in tennis terms, some people think that he is. But his villain origin story, this could be when he gives it that final go and it motivates him, to get that win, maybe at Wimbledon on the grass against Jannik Sinner. But I mean, should there be a place for him outside of, like, this is the question that we have. Andy Roddick has been talking about, the fact that he's kind of called him a hypocrite. He's an influencer, basically saying that he's not really a tennis player anymore. He lives for the likes. Obviously, he's criticised the wild card that Leighton Hewitt's son got. And I just feel like, is he a tennis player first and foremost? And does he have to be a tennis player first and foremost for his continual involvement in the sport, because of how much controversy surrounds him?
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I was literally going to ask you the same because, as you
Oh,
say,
really?
some people might say he's a villain. Some people might say he's an influencer. Some other people might say he's a tennis player. Maybe we should have a vote to see what profession you think Nick Kyrgios is first. I mean, commentator. Um, I, yeah, I do think there is, personally, I do think there is a place for him. The fact that he gets so many people talking, but so many people outside of tennis talking. I mean, when I talk to my friends who don't really follow the tour, typically in the top three talking points is, did you see what Nick Kyrgios said? What did you make of those Nick Kyrgios comments? And I do think he brings in an audience that, you know, that not many people like can do, and I think it's his abrasiveness that does that does do that. It does attract an audience that is different. So I do think there is a place for him, but I get that he's never going to be like everyone's cup of tea. And
Tricky,
I do think
right?
it will. I still do think ultimately it will be a loss if he does decide to hang up his racket, because I do think it will be a case of, you know, unfulfilled potential, because, you know, I do feel like at his peak he can and should win a Grand Slam title in the
His
singles.
talent level so high, but I think that's a very interesting point to kind of leave on, is that, you know, there should be a place for him, but I think at the same time he has to actually kind of get himself into a good place mentally, and he's talked about that a lot. I mean, he talked about that in his Netflix episode on Breakpoint, and you just feel like it's about getting yourself into a good place as opposed to, well, feeling good, doing good. And I think so often he hasn't done that previously. And although I don't necessarily disagree with everything he says about Yannick Sinner, I do completely disagree with the way that he phrases it and the way that he goes about it. So I think that's where I would like to see him have an opportunity to play some better tennis, but I would not like to see him have more opportunities off the tennis court.
Yes. Well, we'll see what the next move is. I believe he's in the Australia Davis Cup squad. I think that is
He's
his
got
next...
the doubles.
The doubles, yeah.
And
So there
Kokkinakis.
was. Oh, of course. Sorry, the doubles at the Australian Open. Yes, of course. Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, let's see if he takes the court, because he did have an abdominal injury, lest we forget, in the match against Fearnley. I'm not really sure it had too much of an impact on the result, if I'm being honest. I think that was a little bit unfair to the performance of Fearnley. But anyway, let's move on. Right, day one, going back all the way to Sunday. And Chris, this, I don't know if any of our listeners, this caught me off guard, because in the UK, this meant that it started on Saturday night, round one of a Grand Slam, which was complete news to me until WhatsApps were sort of coming down into my phone, being like, "Oh, you watching the tennis this evening?" But yes, we had Nishikori coming through in a 5-set thriller, Casper Ruud also coming through in a 5-set thriller, and Arina Sabalenka as well, getting her title defense underway, up and running with a straight sets victory over Sloane Stephens. I mean, I guess to me, the Nishikori thing, it's like Gael Monfils, you know. These guys, they just find a way to win. And Nishikori, just so impressive.
Saving match points. It's great to see. And he has obviously been on the comeback journey for a little while now. It's gone well. I was just very relieved that Casper got the win, because I've gone big on Casper, going deep in this tournament. His numbers were good though, so I was quite pleased with that. 48 winners to 37 unforced errors. You know, he's really kind of putting together the first serves. I think he can sometimes rush it. For Nishikori, I think a long win like this always does make me think, will he be able to back it up in the next round? I think he plays Tommy Paul, who also had a 5-setter.
Yep.
So we'll have to see. But I mean, the Saturday our time, Sunday start in Australia, that was a strange one, I think, because it wasn't necessarily a full lineup and there wasn't that many top players playing.
No, not really.
It kind of felt like a bit of a non-event from that perspective. But Sabalenka was the big event. She did take out Sloane Stephens, who I'm obviously a big fan of. It did look like it would be a bit more competitive when she came back to 4-3 in that first set. But I mean, Sabalenka said it herself. It feels like home. She's won so much here. She's won 17 consecutive sets at Melbourne Park. Big favourite here. Was this a statement victory, Joel?
It was fine. It was fine. It was sort of it sort of
What
went
more
how
do
I
you
was
want?
expecting. It was sort of how I was expecting it to go. There will obviously be tougher matches to come for Sabalenka, but yeah, nice, easy one to get her into the competition. As you said, not really many kind of standout matches on day one. We had Zverev come through in straight sets, Donovan Vekic in straight sets as well. Lehechka victory, Qinwen Zheng straight sets. So
Andreeva.
yeah, exactly. So Badosa as well, I guess. But yeah, it didn't really, I think, start with that. It's really kicked into overdrive, I think, on day 2 and day 3. Let's move on to collector set, because we announced our collector set player picks in our preview episode. Thank you, everyone who has got in touch and given us your predictions. We are now going to unveil our predictions. As a reminder, these are the players we selected: Djokovic, Draper, de Minaur, Zheng, Badosa, Coco, Gauff. And we asked, what round do you think these players will get to? And if they get to the final, tell us if they're going to win or be a runner-up. So, Chris, I'm going to say the name and we're going to unveil which round we think these players are going to get to.
I also have Kim's, if we'd like to reveal that as well.
I think let's reveal Kim's as well, definitely.
I can do both of those.
Okay, right. Let's start. Novak Djokovic.
I've gone for a quarterfinal for Novak Djokovic, sticking to my guns on that one. And Kim has gone for a semi-final.
Interesting. I have gone more brutal. I've gone round 3. I don't even think he's making the Alcaraz showdown at the moment.
When were these predictions made is what I want to know. I want to see the date these were committed to paper. Was it after that first set?
Sorry, no, it wasn't. It wasn't, but I wasn't convinced. I think he could face Machak in round 3.
Okay.
And I want to say it's Machak. I always get confused.
It is. I think it is.
Okay,
yeah.
He's got Machak, and Machak defeated him the last time they played each other. It was on the clay court, but that's what I'm taking.
I hope I got that right, but I feel like that is what we thought.
I always get confused between Machak, Menchik, and
is it Lehechka or someone like that?
Yes. It confuses me. Right. Okay, Jack Draper.
I've gone for round 4. I think he'll live up to his billing, but I'm not sure he's going to make the quarterfinal. And Kim has actually done something quite different from what she went for when it came to the predictions earlier on. She's gone round 2.
Oh, okay. I've also gone round 4. Alex
Very
de Minaur.
nice.
Alex de Minaur.
I think Sin is going to get the edge of him, and I think Kim thinks the same. We've both gone for a quarterfinal.
Interesting. I have gone semi-final.
Well, we've all got a bit rogue in certain ways, haven't we?
That is a bit rogue.
That is.
Yeah. Okay, right. On to the female picks. Zheng. Qinwen Zheng.
Kim and I are in agreement. We've both gone quarterfinal.
I've gone round 4.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember why. Just have.
Just vibes. We like it.
Paula Badosa.
Kim has gone for round 4, and I've gone for the quarterfinals.
Round 3. God, I've been a bit savage here.
I think everyone has gone quarterfinals for me, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Coco Gauff.
I've gone semi-finals. Kim has stuck with her guns and gone for the win.
Oh, big. I've also gone semi-final as well.
Right. Well, let's see. We had lots of entries. We'll be keeping you updated as we go. And there's a lot on the line, Joel. A very, very coveted Tennis Weekly mug.
I know, a lot on the line. Let's see how our listeners do. We will be providing a midway update at some point in week 2. So look out for that. But yeah, excited to see how we all get on in Collect Set. Who's going to take home the wooden spoon? That's what I want to know. Right. Let's finally look at day 4 coming up. Round 2 begins at the Australian Open. Rod Laver, Sabalenka, Monero, Djokovic, Faria, the qualifier, Gauff, Burridge, Martinez, Zverev, Margaret Court. We've got Mertens, Pegula. Interestingly, for the second round in a row, Nishikori, Alcaraz.
Alcaraz does not make sense on Margaret Court when he's such a big draw. I really don't understand Zverev being on... Unless it's a request that's come through, it could be,
must be.
But it feels very, very strange because if you had a ticket for Rod Laver, you would think, surely I'm going to see the 2 biggest names. I mean, Zverev's never won a Grand Slam, even if he is the second seed. So I'd be disappointed. So I think that's some very odd scheduling. I do understand splitting seeds. He is obviously not the second seed, but I don't agree with that one.
Yeah, not sure about that. I mean, Ruud, Menchik as well. Badosa versus Gibson of
yes,
Australia.
indeed.
I mean, where are you looking at, Chris? What's your match
It's
of
got to be
day
the
4?
twilight session of Draper Kokkinakis. They
Oh,
played many
yes.
times before. I think that's going to be a really spicy one. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to see if Djokovic is going to raise his level, because I think we've seen almost like the first part of the story. I don't think it's all going to be, perfect. So I think it's interesting to see, like, how does he get through on this path to 25?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm looking at that. Yeah, Schneider Tomjanovic also. I think that could be quite a competitive match, quite an interesting one for Schneider. So yeah, lots to see. And also Jodie Burrage, how's she going to get on against Coco Gauff? That is a big time match. I feel like, yeah, she's not got much to lose there, but let's see how competitive, shall we say, she can make it. If she can take a set, I'll be very happy with that. But
She will
anyway,
be too, I'm sure.
right, we're going to end our round 1 catch up there. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come in Melbourne Park over the next couple of weeks. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Plus, like and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as hit that notification bell.
Yes, this is a video podcast. We always announce it too late, but you can watch us if you've listened, you want to see it all again, or if you'd like to continue listening from an audio perspective, we also appreciate that. If you'd like to see some of the clips from the podcast, we're posting them on our social media throughout the tournament. And as always, our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X, the handle is Tennis Weekly Pod. You can purchase, those last 2 tote bags, Joel. They aren't selling like wildfire just yet. They're still there. There's still a chance if you're in Melbourne. If you're in Melbourne, contact us and maybe we'll send them to you, but maybe not in time for the tennis. But that's etsy.com/shop/tennisweeklypodcast. You can also email us, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, if you have any questions for us to answer on the pod during the Australian Open, or if you'd like to tell us what you've thought of anything you've seen so far. We do love to hear from you. But do also check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Thursday at Tennis Weekly HQ for our round 2 catch up of the Australian Open. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, as always, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.